After 60 seconds, all the entrances and exits of the underground secret base will be sealed because the virus in the lab was accidentally leaked, causing all the researchers to undergo strange transformations. To prevent the virus from spreading to the outside world, the base has activated the safety system. Only 3 people are left, running nonstop towards the exit. If they hesitate for just 1 minute, they'll be trapped here and become food for the monsters. But when the bearded man in front ran to the exit, he suddenly stopped and raised the weapon in his hand. Without saying a word, he shot the man with glasses behind him. Although Bella, the last one, tried to plead, she couldn't escape her fate and was shot in the thigh. You can see that this bearded man seemed a bit helpless. But when the countdown ended, the door finally closed, and he was the only one who escaped. By then, the entire base had been sealed, and the monster's roar was getting closer. To make matters worse, the second rolling door was slowly closing, but Bella needed to quickly return to the lab. Otherwise, she'd be trapped in the tunnel. However, what she didn't expect was the man who was just shot earlier. When Bella crawled through the rolling door, the man with glasses was close behind, but unfortunately, he was crushed by the rolling door. He tried to grab Bella's long legs, begging Bella not to leave him, but unfortunately, it was too late. The monster had caught up through the ventilation duct. He directly dragged the man with glasses away. Dr. Bella, a female scientist, escaped from danger and immediately went to the lab. She used a video to send a distress signal outside. If not, she would destroy all research results before dying. Although she didn't know if anyone would come to rescue her, what she could do now was find a safe place to survive. However, terrifying monsters were everywhere. Fortunately, Bella used the test results, making the distress threat effective. Some mercenaries have taken the mission and are preparing for the rescue. Scott and his brother Vicky will enter the base under the leadership of Captain Laura. But this journey is not as simple as imagined, because there is a hostile military force lurking in the nearby forest. Their target is also the result of experiments in the research base, because the enemy has a lot of people, while the mercenary team only has 7 members. And the steel door at the front is certainly impenetrable. But the reconnaissance team went ahead of schedule and discovered 2 secret exits. They just need to get past this hostile military force and then infiltrate the base to rescue the female doctor. As a precaution, Scott led some people into hiding in the nearby forest. Meanwhile, Laura took a group to infiltrate the base and rescue the female doctor. The plan seemed fairly perfect, but Bella didn't seem to tell anyone about the virus leak. Scott quickly reached the small forest next to the base. While moving, he spotted an enemy soldier searching for a way in. The soldier saw him and immediately fled. If he alerts the enemy forces, the rescue team's plan will be exposed. Fortunately, the team managed to capture him in time. However, Scott didn't choose to eliminate him at first. Instead, he tied him to a tree and continued his mission. This also posed a risk that the enemy might discover it later. Meanwhile, Laura brought her team to the secret entrance, and they successfully infiltrated the base using explosives. As soon as they entered, they spotted a man with his back turned to them. Looking closely, it turned out to be a researcher undergoing a transformation. Although they didn't know what had happened, Laura's instincts told her the researcher was not normal. At the moment he lunged, they decisively pulled the trigger. Meanwhile, Scott fled because the enemy soldier they captured had escaped, so they encountered a fierce fire attack. On their way to escape, one of their comrades was shot in the neck and severely injured, and the comrade beside him was also shot and fell on the spot. Being kind to the enemy is being cruel to yourself. When Scott encountered that soldier again, he took him down decisively and without hesitation. The soldier's death also caused the fire to cease, but they had to pay a heavy price for this. Their fallen comrade now lies cold, and another teammate lost the ability to move. Faced with the advancing ground forces, the 2 of them could only hide him under a tree and stay nearby to observe the situation. But what they didn't expect was the enemy brought out the search dogs, and under the guidance of the K9 unit, the enemy quickly located them through scent tracking. Seeing this, Vicky brutally attacked first, but after taking down one enemy, his position was exposed. Ignoring his teammate hiding in the tree hollow, the 2 of them had no choice but to fight while retreating until they reached the edge of a cliff. With no escape route, they finally decided to jump into the lake. After struggling for a while, the 2 were very lucky to survive, seeing now that continuing to hide outside for protection is useless. So they decided to enter the base through another entrance and meet Laura. Meanwhile, a teammate hiding under the tree is in a bad situation. He was directly captured by the enemy and taken to the camp. It turns out that the enemy's boss is Nathan, the bearded man who escaped from the base the first time. They eagerly questioned the guy with the hat, trying to get him to reveal the location of the secret entrance. But the guy with the hat would rather die than surrender. And at that moment, the black bag suddenly moved. Nathan quickly pointed his gun at the black bag. When they opened it, they found a lab creature inside. It turns out they were hiding near the experimental base, not to get the results from the research inside, but to prevent the monster from escaping and infecting more people. After hearing this, the man in the hat started to waver. Could it be that after all this time in hiding, he's actually the villain? At that moment, the two Scots had entered the base. In the laboratory, they discovered a picture of Dr. Bella and the virus-infected person. Through the recording, they learned an important piece of news. The object being studied at the base is an ancient body found under the glacier, and inside the body is a virus that can alter human genes. As soon as the two heard this, they were stunned. And suddenly, they heard a roar. Vicky stayed behind to take the documents, while Scott went ahead alone to investigate. And the results showed nothing unusual. Instead, they found Bella hiding in a corner. No one expected she would still be alive. Bella warned Scott to stay quiet, because there's a very scary monster nearby. Sure enough, a second later, a stream of drool dripped from above Scott's head. He didn't even have time to react. He was punched away by the monster with one blow. This punch, with 20 years of power, left Scott stunned on the spot. He wanted to grab his gun to counterattack, but the monster pinned him under its foot. Fortunately, Bella managed to distract the monster in time, and Vicky heard the noise and immediately rushed over. He decisively pulled the trigger towards the monster, making the monster flee in fear. But this wasn't the only monster, but the gunshot just now will attract all of them here. Bella hurriedly led the two of them to escape, but when they reached the exit, they found that Nathan had led people inside. Clearly, they had been betrayed by the man in the hat. Seeing this, they had no choice but to escape through another exit. However, when Vicky turned around, she only saw a monster standing in the middle of the path. The three of them immediately found themselves in a dilemma. Fortunately, Bella was quite familiar with the base, and she led the two of them to crawl through the ventilation duct. From there, they could circle around. But if nothing unexpected happens, then an incident is about to occur. Vicky accidentally touched the tape recorder switch. The sound alerted the monster to their presence. The three of them hurriedly crawled outside, risking their lives. But on the way, Scott's ankle was slashed by the creature. Luckily, they finally crawled outside without any further danger, and Scott angrily confronted Bella. What on earth happened here? With things having gone this far, Bella didn't hide it anymore. They had used the blood of an ancient corpse from 30 years ago to create an experimental subject through artificial insemination named Adam. But the experimental subjects were extremely unstable, so they had to isolate the subject. But unexpectedly, 30 years later today, the research subjects lost control and escaped the isolation chamber. As a result, except for her, over 10 researchers at the entire base were infected by the virus. Clearly, this Adam was the prototype of all the monsters. But when you two asked where Adam is, then Bella said she was taken down by Nathan. After learning about everything, the three quickly continued toward the exit. But unexpectedly, just as Scott opened the vent, one of Nathan's henchmen found them. He ordered everyone to drop their weapons, but he didn't notice a monster appearing behind him. They took advantage of this distraction. The three of them hurriedly crawled into the ventilation shaft. After escaping from there, they discovered that Laura was seriously injured. In the recent battle with the monster, Laura, unfortunately, was bitten, and the two teammates who went with her were nowhere to be found. At this moment, Vicky begged Bella to spare her life, but Bella said she was already infected with the virus, and she could transform at any moment. But Vicky didn't care that much. She immediately went to get a stretcher to take Laura away, but after seeing Vicky leave, Bella made an excuse to send Scott away. At that moment, Laura glared at Bella with anger. It seemed like she knew something, but a second later, Bella pointed a gun at her and pulled the trigger. And she didn't want to delay her escape, because of Laura. After hearing the gunshots, both of them turned back. They saw Laura lying on the ground. Vicky, her ex-boyfriend, was furious, but Bella explained that she was going through changes, so she had no choice but to do it. But Vicky wouldn't listen at all, and said that Bella must pay the price. But luckily, Scott stopped him and advised him to calm down. Right when the two were arguing, the monster caught up with them. The three quickly ran away again. In the panic, they unfortunately got separated. Scott and the other person made it to the lab, but they also encountered a monster that was gradually transforming. Bella decisively didn't hesitate, rushed in with a knife to take care of him, but Vicky, who was with them, got separated and ended up in the morgue. To hide from the monster, he hid in the morgue, but he forgot to leave an escape route for himself, and he got trapped inside. To make matters worse, the corpse next to him suddenly transformed and attacked him. Even though he successfully took it down with a dagger, he was also bitten on the arm. However, just as he was in despair, the morgue door suddenly opened. He thought he was saved, but it turned out to be Nathan's men. They tied Vicky to the hospital bed and forced him to reveal his teammate's location. But Vicky, influenced by the virus, was imagining the scene of the base losing control in her mind. At that time, she saw someone attacking a researcher in the lab, then tried her best to escape, and that person was none other than Dr. Bella. Clearly, Bella wasn't a real doctor. She was the source of all the wrongdoing, and also Adam's specimen of the monster. Vicky finally understood everything, but unexpectedly, a monster charged in, killing Nathan's younger brother on the spot. But Vicky, who was tied up, wasn't attacked by the monster, because he was infected by the virus, so the monster thought he was one of them. Then Vicky used a dagger to cut himself free, and she's getting ready to find Scott to tell him the whole truth. But Scott on this side is also preparing to find Vicky. However, Bella ends up stopping him. She then says she has the research results in her hands. She absolutely must take them out first. If Nathan gets his hands on the research results, then the whole world will be doomed. And just like that, Scott was deceived. But who would have thought Nathan would seal the virus inside the lab base? And Bella right in front of them turned out to be the real villain. But not long after, Scott discovered something was wrong. The two of them just got to Adam's room. Bella started feeling uneasy again, and this didn't seem to be the first time, until they saw the crib in Adam's room. Scott finally realized, wasn't Adam supposed to be a boy? Why is he in a cradle? Because the wife, who was pregnant, often felt nauseous. This detail made Scott suspicious of Bella. At this point, Bella had no choice but to reveal the truth. She indeed is Adam's biological model. Since birth, she had been used as a research subject, and she just didn't want her child to turn out the same way. But Scott knew that Bella's body was carrying the virus, so he definitely wouldn't let her go out and infect others. The reason Bella didn't turn into a monster was because the blood of the ancient corpse only altered the genes of adults, and she was an in vitro fertilized embryo, so she could perfectly integrate with each type of virus. Not only that, Bella herself can also control other monsters. Just as Scott was considering whether to deal with Bella, the culprit, Bella had already controlled a monster to attack him. Seeing Scott about to be torn apart, at the critical moment, Vicky arrived just in time. She pointed her gun at Bella, but this monster was still a kind-hearted young man. Seeing Bella's life in danger, he took the initiative to lower Scott, while Bella seized the opportunity to escape, and the monster charged towards Vicky nearby. Fortunately, Scott picked up the flamethrower and turned the monster into a roasted beast. But Bella had already escaped through a secret exit. For the first time, she encountered the outside world. Bella was captivated by the human scenery, but the joy didn't last long, as she was suddenly caught by Nathan from behind. It turns out the security chief of the base is Nathan. Although Bella is an experimental subject, due to the long time they've spent together, Nathan has developed feelings for her through the races. As Bella embraced him, at that moment he didn't know what the right thing to do was, and he didn't even know how to free himself, or whether he could still go to any lengths. Before leaving, Nathan delivered a fatal stab to Bella. By the time the two Scotts came out of the base, they saw Bella barely holding on, but they didn't know that this wound is like a minor scratch to the specimen. When the two were caught off guard and suddenly attacked, as soon as they took turns attacking Bella, they were no match for her at all. At this moment, Bella only wanted to win quickly, and was ready to pick up a gun to finish it all. But Scott couldn't hold back any longer. He strangled her directly with a rope from behind, but the result is still being defeated by her. At this moment, Bella angrily picks up the dagger from the ground, and decisively rushes to stab Scott. In this dangerous moment, Vicky, who is about to transform, tries to stay conscious. A rope from the other side is tied around him. Then he doesn't hesitate and jumps down. Just like that, Bella smells the scent of freedom in the air. He was already fatally injured at the base's exit. Scott was also wounded earlier by a monster's claw, and unfortunately got infected by the virus. In his final moments, he was gradually losing consciousness. He managed to activate the locator. By the time the rescue team found Scott, he had already fully transformed.